Broken alien bones crunched under Darren Bailey's boots, the remnants of those who dared to stand in humanity's way as the 35-year-old human strode into the Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime. Panic-stricken representatives from the galaxy's 12 most influential races huddled together, their usual arrogance replaced by fear as a new threat loomed on the horizon, the Ventaxian Dominion. Emperor Quasar's ruthless empire had already subjugated over 100 star systems, their advanced technology and brutal tactics crushing all opposition. The Council, desperate for a solution, turned to Darren, one of the United Earth Federation's top special operatives. They believed that only a human, with their unique blend of adaptability, tenacity, and unpredictability, could infiltrate the Ventaxian ranks and uncover their plans for galactic domination. Councillor Zaxtar, a wise and ancient Zephyrian, pulled Darren aside, his voice grave. The Ventaxians have discovered an ancient artifact known as the Nexus Key. If activated, it has the power to create wormholes to any point in the galaxy, allowing them to strike anywhere, anytime. We need you to stop them, Darren. The fate of the galaxy is in your hands. Darren hesitated, the weight of the mission bearing down on him. He knew the risks, the likelihood that he might not return, but he also knew that if he didn't act, the Ventaxians would crush every last bastion of freedom in the galaxy, enslaving all who stood in their way. With a deep breath, Darren accepted the mission, his resolve hardening like steel. He would infiltrate the Ventaxian Dominion, gather the intelligence needed to stop them, and prove once and for all that humanity was born to inherit the stars. The next 2 weeks were a grueling gauntlet of training, as Darren pushed himself to the limits at a hidden Galactic Council base. Zaxtar outfitted him with bleeding-edge infiltration tech, a chameleon suit that shifted colors and textures to blend into any environment, and a neural implant that translated all known alien languages in real time. Ventaxian culture experts drilled Darren on every aspect of their militaristic society. He learned about their rigid caste system, where social status depended entirely on one's combat abilities and kill count. Those at the top were the deadliest warriors, and at the very apex sat Emperor Quasar himself, an undefeated strategic mastermind. Remember, Quasar has never lost a battle, Zaxtar warned grimly. He's always 10 steps ahead, never underestimate him. Darren nodded, committing every scrap of intel to memory. Finally, the day arrived to embark on his mission. A Galactic Council stealth ship ferried him to the fringes of Ventaxian space and dropped him into a cloaked one-man fighter. His first objective, infiltrate the Ventaxian military outpost on Zelos Prime and uncover the location of the Nexus Key along with Quasar's plans for conquest. Darren gripped the controls tightly as his ship sliced through the inky void. But as he neared the planet's atmosphere, alarms suddenly blared. "Shit, they've made me!" Darren swore. A squadron of Ventaxian fighters was already screaming toward him, weapons hot. Disengaging the cloak, Darren wrenched his ship into a barrel roll, barely evading the initial salvo of laser fire. His fingers flew over the controls, diverting power to shields and engines. The nimble Ventaxian ship swarmed him like a pack of hungry wolves. Traces of sizzling plasma crisscrossed around Darren's cockpit. Gritting his teeth, he snap-rolled and juked, using every ounce of his piloting skill to survive the deadly dance. Spotting an opening, Darren squeezed the trigger, spitting a burst of railgun rounds that stitched a line of explosions across a Ventaxian fighter's hull. It spiraled away, trailing smoke and flames. One down, but the rest pressed their attack with renewed ferocity, pummeling Darren's shields with hammering blows. Damage warnings flashed red across his HUD. He had to end this, fast. Throwing his ship into a tight loop, Darren managed to swing onto the tail of the remaining bogies. Plasma lances stabbed out again and again, until finally the Ventaxian ships vanished in blossoming fireballs. Darren sagged in his restraints, his heart hammering. But there was no time to celebrate. More alarms shrieked, warning of critical system failures. Smoke curled from sparking, burnt-out panels. Zelos Prime's lush green surface rushed up to fill his cracked canopy. Jaw clenched with concentration, Darren wrestled with the controls, trying to wrestle his mortally wounded ship into a controlled crash landing. A dense alien jungle raced up to meet him. Darren braced for impact as the crippled fighter skimmed the top of the soaring trees, then plowed into the undergrowth with a tortured shriek of metal. The world exploded into a kaleidoscope of twisting shadows and shattered glass. Then everything went black. Darren Bailey jolted awake, his body screaming with pain. Every muscle, every bone, every nerve ending felt like it had been run through a meat grinder. He lay still for a moment, his mind slowly emerging from the fog of unconsciousness, trying to remember where he was and how he got there. Then it all came rushing back, the mission, the space battle, the crash. Sitting up with a groan, Darren surveyed the wreckage of his ship. It was a miracle he'd survived at all. The cockpit was a twisted mess of shattered glass and sparking wires. Smoke still curled from the crumpled nose of the craft, and the acrid stench of burning electronics assaulted his nostrils. Gingerly, Darren extracted himself from the tangled remains of his safety harness. He hissed through clenched teeth as he put weight on his right leg, definitely broken. His ribs were on fire, and the coppery taste of blood coated his tongue. But he was alive, and he had a mission to complete. Gritting his teeth against the agony, Darren limped away from the crash site, activating his chameleon suit to blend into the dense foliage. He needed to find shelter, assess his injuries, and figure out his next move. Zaxtar's voice echoed in his mind. "You must find the Nexus key before the Ventaxians do. The fate of the galaxy depends on it." As he stumbled through the undergrowth, Darren suddenly heard a rustling sound off to his left. He froze, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. A figure emerged from the bushes, but it wasn't a Ventaxian soldier. It was a small, reptilian creature, no more than 4 feet tall, with scales the color of emeralds and eyes that glittered with intelligence. The creature spoke, its voice a series of clicks and chirps, but thanks to Darren's neural implant, the words translated seamlessly in his mind. You are not Ventaxian," the creature said, its tone a mixture of fear and curiosity. "What are you doing here?" Darren held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "My name is Darren Bailey. I'm a human from the United Earth Federation. I'm here to stop the Ventaxians from finding a powerful artifact called the Nexus Key. Can you help me?" The creature hesitated, then nodded. "I am Takar of the Zalosian people. The Ventaxians have enslaved us, forced us to work in their mines. They search for something ancient and powerful. Is this the Nexus Key you speak of?" Darren's heart raced. This was the break he needed. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Takar, if you help me find the mines, I promise I'll do everything in my power to free your people from the Ventaxians. Deal?" Takar's eyes narrowed, considering. Then he extended a clawed hand. "Deal," he said. "Follow me, but be warned. The journey will be dangerous. The jungle is full of Ventaxian patrols, and they do not take kindly to intruders." Darren clasped Takar's hand, sealing their pact. "I'm no stranger to danger," he said grimly. "Lead the way." For hours they trekked through the dense jungle, Takar guiding them along hidden game trails and secret paths known only to the Zalosians. Darren's leg throbbed with every step, but he pushed the pain to the back of his mind, focusing on the mission at hand. Suddenly Takar froze, his nostrils flaring. "Ventaxians," he hissed. "A patrol coming this way. Quick, hide." But it was too late. A squad of heavily armed Ventaxian soldiers burst from the undergrowth, their weapons trained on Darren and Takar. Leading them was a massive, scarred warrior, with eyes like chips of obsidian, Commander Zoran, the most notorious and brutal of all Ventaxian officers. Well, what have we here?" Zoran sneered. "A human spy and a Zalosian traitor. The Emperor will be most pleased when I bring him your heads." Darren stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You're not taking us anywhere, Zoran," he snarled. "I know what you're searching for in those mines. The Nexus Key, and I'm here to stop you." Zoran threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You stop us? You're nothing but a pathetic, wounded animal. I'll enjoy crushing you like the insect you are." With a roar, Zoran charged, his fists swinging like wrecking balls. Darren met him head-on, ducking and weaving, using his smaller size and superior agility to evade the Ventaxian's blows. He struck back with lightning-fast jabs and kicks, targeting Zoran's pressure points and weak spots with surgical precision. The two warriors traded blows in a brutal dance, neither giving an inch. Darren could feel his strength waning, his injuries taking their toll, but he refused to yield. Too much was at stake. In a desperate gamble, Darren feinted left, then spun right, lashing out with a devastating roundhouse kick that caught Zoran square in the temple. The Ventaxian staggered, his eyes glazing over, then toppled like a felled tree. The other soldiers gaped in shock and fear as Darren stood over their fallen commander, his chest heaving. "Anyone else want to try their luck?" he growled. The Ventaxians backed away, muttering in awe and terror. Takar stepped forward, his eyes shining with respect. "You defeated Zoran," he whispered. "No one has ever done that before. You truly are a mighty warrior, Darren Bailey." Darren shook his head. "I'm just a man doing what needs to be done," he said. "Now let's get to those mines before the Ventaxians recover." Disguised in Ventaxian armor taken from the fallen soldiers, Darren and Takar infiltrated the mines, slipping past the guards with ease. The tunnels were dark and claustrophobic, the air thick with the stench of sweat and fear. Zelosian slaves toiled under the watchful eyes of their Ventaxian overseers, their spirits broken by long years of servitude. Deep in the heart of the mines they found it, the chamber where the Ventaxians had unearthed the Nexus Key. It was a thing of beauty and terror, a swirling vortex of energy contained within an ancient alien device. Darren could feel its power thrumming through his bones, calling to him. But he wasn't the only one drawn to the key. As Darren reached out to take it, a voice rang out behind him, a voice he had hoped never to hear again. "I knew you would come for the key eventually, human," Emperor Quasar said, stepping from the shadows with a squad of elite guards at his back. "You may have bested Zoran, but you are no match for me. Surrender now, and I may grant you a swift death." Darren's mind raced, searching for a way out. He was wounded, exhausted, outnumbered. There was no way he could fight his way past Quasar and his guards. But maybe, just maybe, there was another option. In a flash, Darren lunged for the Nexus Key, his fingers closing around its ancient metal surface. It thrummed with eldritch energies, responding to his touch. Quasar roared in fury, charging forward with his guards at his heels. But Darren was faster. With a desperate cry, he activated the key, pouring all his willpower into the alien device. A blinding flash of light erupted from the key, engulfing Darren, Takar, and Quasar. The world around them dissolved into a maelstrom of swirling colors and howling winds. When the light faded, they were gone, transported to an unknown corner of the universe far beyond the reach of the Galactic Council or the Ventaxian Dominion. The battle for the Nexus Key had only just begun, and Darren Bailey would stop at nothing to keep it out of Emperor Quasar's hands. As the blinding light of the Nexus Key faded, Darren Bailey blinked away the spots dancing in his vision. Harsh alien sunlight assaulted his eyes, and the air tasted of rust and decay. He found himself standing on a barren, rocky plain, the ground beneath his feet cracked and lifeless. Towering ruins of twisted metal and crumbling stone dotted the landscape, the remnants of a long-dead civilization. Beside him, Takar and Emperor Quasar slowly regained their senses, their expressions a mix of confusion and wariness. The Zelosian scales shimmered a dull, sickly green in the strange light, while Quasar's obsidian armor seemed to absorb the shadows lurking among the ruins. "Where the hell are we?" Darren muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. Quasar's eyes narrowed, his gaze sweeping over the desolate wasteland. "I do not know, human, but it seems your foolish actions with the Nexus Key have stranded us on this forsaken rock." Takar hissed, his claws flexing. "We must find a way back to Zelos Prime. My people need me." A distant, inhuman shriek echoed across the plain, sending chills down Darren's spine. "I don't think we're alone here," he said grimly. "We need to find shelter, Figure out our next move. Quasar sneered, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade. I take orders from no one, least of all a pathetic human. I will find my own way back to the Dominion, and when I do, I will make you pay for this insult. Darren stepped forward, his jaw tight. Listen, you arrogant bastard. Like it or not, we're in this together. We have a better chance of surviving if we work as a team. For a long, tense moment, Quasar glared at Darren, his eyes smouldering with barely contained rage. Then, with a grunt of disgust, he turned away. Very well, human, but make no mistake, this changes nothing between us. As they set out across the barren landscape, the sun beating down mercilessly overhead, Darren couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hair on the back of his neck prickled, and he found himself constantly scanning the shadows lurking among the ruins. Suddenly a flicker of movement caught his eye. A creature vaguely reptilian, but with too many limbs and eyes that glowed a sickly green, skittered out from behind a twisted spire of metal. It let out a piercing shriek, and then more of the creatures emerged, their maws dripping with viscous saliva. "Mutants!" Quasar snarled, drawing his blade. "Stand ready!" The creatures charged, their claws scrabbling against the rocky ground. Darren raised his sidearm and fired, the plasma bolt searing through the air and striking the lead mutant in the center of its misshapen head. It collapsed, its body twitching and spasming. But more kept coming, a seemingly endless tide of twisted flesh and snapping jaws. Quasar waded into their midst, his blade flashing in the harsh sunlight as he hacked and slashed with ruthless efficiency. Takar darted among the creatures, his claws finding gaps in their armored hides and spilling brackish blood across the stones. Darren kept firing, his aim steady even as the mutants swarmed around him. One leaped at his face, its jaws gaping wide, but he ducked and rolled, coming up with his knife in hand. He drove the blade deep into the creature's throat, hot blood spattering his face and chest. The battle seemed to drag on for an eternity, the air thick with the stench of death and the shrieks of the dying. But finally, the last of the mutants fell, its body shuddering and then going still. Darren sagged to his knees, his chest heaving with exertion. Takar limped over to him, a deep gash running along his flank. Even Quasar looked battered, his armor dented and splattered with gore. "We can't stay here," Darren panted. "We need to find shelter, water, food." Quasar nodded grudgingly. "Agreed. These ruins may hold the answers we seek, but first we must ensure our own survival." As they set off once more, picking their way through the twisted wreckage of the ancient city, Darren couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were only just beginning. The Nexus key had brought them to this place for a reason, but what that reason was, he couldn't begin to guess. All he knew was that he had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and he would stop at nothing to uncover the secrets of the progenitors, no matter the cost. Days turned into weeks as Darren, Takar, and Quasar struggled to survive on the hostile alien world. They scavenged what meager supplies they could from the ruins, fashioning makeshift shelters from the twisted metal and crumbling stone. The mutant creatures were a constant threat, attacking without warning and forcing the unlikely allies to fight for their lives on a daily basis. But as they delved deeper into the ruins, they began to uncover tantalizing clues about the planet's former inhabitants. The progenitors, it seemed, had been a highly advanced race, their technology far surpassing anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had harnessed the power of wormholes, using them to travel vast distances in the blink of an eye. "The Nexus key is just the beginning," Darren muttered, studying a series of intricate glyphs carved into a towering obelisk. "There's more out there. I'm sure of it." Quasar nodded, his eyes gleaming with avarice. "With the progenitor's technology at my command, the galaxy will tremble before the might of the Ventaxian Dominion." Darren shot him a wary glance. "We don't even know what this technology is capable of, or what it was used for. We need to be careful." But Quasar merely sneered. "Careful is for the weak, human. The strong take what they want, and to hell with the consequences." Despite his misgivings, Darren couldn't deny the allure of the progenitor's secrets. With each new discovery, He felt himself being drawn deeper into their world, consumed by the desire to unlock the mysteries they had left behind. And so, driven by their mutual obsession, Darren and Quasar formed an uneasy alliance, pooling their knowledge and resources in a desperate bid to unravel the progenitor's legacy. Takar, caught between his loyalty to Darren and his fear of Quasar, could only watch and wait, hoping that their quest would not lead them all to ruin. Finally, after weeks of searching, they found what they were looking for, a hidden chamber deep beneath the ruins, its walls covered in glowing glyphs and pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly energy. In the center of the chamber stood a towering machine, its surface etched with intricate patterns and symbols. "To the Nexus Gate," Quasar breathed, his eyes wide with wonder, "the key to unlocking the progenitor's power." Darren approached the machine cautiously, the Nexus key clutched tightly in his hand. He could feel its energy thrumming through his bones, calling out to the ancient device. With a deep breath, he inserted the key into a waiting slot, and the chamber exploded with blinding light. When the glare faded, a shimmering portal stood before them, its surface rippling and pulsing like the surface of a pond. Beyond, Darren could see the swirling void of space and the distant stars of the galaxy he had left behind. "This is it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Our ticket home." Quasar stepped forward, his hand outstretched. "And the key to the progenitor's secrets. With this power at our command, we will be unstoppable." Darren hesitated, torn between his desire to return to the fight against the Dominion and his growing unease at the prospect of unleashing the progenitor's technology upon the galaxy. But in the end, he knew he had no choice. The fate of billions hung in the balance, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. Together, Darren, Takar, and Quasar stepped through the portal, leaving the desolate ruins of the progenitor world behind. But as they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in the midst of a raging battle, the forces of the Galactic Council and the Ventaxian Dominion locked in a desperate struggle for control of a vital star system. And at the center of it all, glinting in the light of 1,000 suns, lay another piece of the progenitor puzzle, a second Nexus key, waiting to be claimed by whoever proved strong enough to take it. The race was on, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Darren could only hope that he would be fast enough, smart enough, and strong enough to stay one step ahead of his enemies and his allies in the battles to come. As the smoke cleared from the latest skirmish, Darren took a moment to catch his breath. The Galactic Council forces had put up a fierce fight, but in the end, they were no match for the combined might of his human ingenuity and Quasar's Ventaxian brutality. They had claimed the second Nexus key, but the victory had come at a cost. Takar had been wounded in the fighting, his green scales stained with deep purple blood. Darren had patched him up as best he could, but the Zalosian would need proper medical attention soon. Quasar, on the other hand, seemed to revel in the carnage. His eyes gleamed with a feverish light as he turned the key over in his hands, marveling at its intricate design. "2 down," he said, his voice thick with satisfaction. "Only a few more to go, and the progenitor's power will be mine." Darren shot him a sharp look. "Ours, you mean? We're in this together, remember?" Quasar's lip curled in a sneer. "Of course, human, together." But Darren couldn't shake the feeling that Quasar was hiding something, that his true intentions were far more sinister than he let on. He would have to watch his back, even as they worked together to uncover the remaining keys. As they set out in search of the next piece of the puzzle, Darren found himself increasingly torn between his desire to do what was right and his growing hunger for the progenitor's power. With each new artifact they uncovered, he could feel the temptation growing stronger, the whispers of the ancient technology calling out to him in his dreams. And then there was Takar. The Zalosian had become more than just an ally. He was a friend, someone Darren had come to rely on in the heat of battle and the quiet moments in between. The thought of losing him was almost too much to bear. But as they drew closer to their goal, Darren knew that the hardest choices were still ahead. He could only hope that, when the time came, he would have the strength to do what needed to be done, no matter the cost. The star was dying, its once brilliant surface now a mottled patchwork of reds and oranges as it slowly consumed itself from within. On a rocky outcropping overlooking the churning inferno, Darren and Quasar faced each other, the final Nexus key clutched tightly in Darren's hand. "It's over, Quasar," Darren said, his voice hard. "The progenitor technology is too dangerous. We have to destroy it before it falls into the wrong hands." Quasar's eyes flashed with rage. "You fool. With this power we could rule the galaxy. We could crush the Dominion and the Council alike and usher in a new era of peace and prosperity." Darren shook his head. "No, the progenitor's secrets are not meant for us. We have to let them go." With a roar of fury, Quasar lunged at Darren, his blade flashing in the dying light of the star. Darren met him head-on, his own weapon drawn and ready. They clashed in a flurry of sparks and snarling metal, their blades dancing and weaving in a deadly choreography. Quasar was strong, his Ventaxian physiology granting him superhuman speed and resilience. But Darren was quick and agile, his human reflexes honed by years of training and combat. Back and forth they fought, neither giving ground as the star raged and boiled behind them. Quasar's blade found its mark, slicing deep into Darren's shoulder and sending hot blood spilling down his arm. But Darren gritted his teeth and pushed through the pain, his own weapon darting out to score a glancing blow across Quasar's chest. In the end, it was Takar who made the difference. The brave Zelosian, still wounded from their earlier battles, threw himself at Quasar with a cry of defiance. His claws raked across the Ventaxian's face, momentarily blinding him and giving Darren the opening he needed. With a final, desperate lunge, Darren drove his blade deep into Quasar's chest, piercing the Emperor's black heart. Quasar staggered back, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Impossible," he gurgled, black blood bubbling from his lips. "Defeated by a human." And then he was gone, his body toppling back into the seething maelstrom of the dying star. Darren staggered, his vision swimming with exhaustion and blood loss. Beside him, Takar let out a weak cough, his own injuries taking their toll. "We did it," the Zelosian whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of the star. "The galaxy is safe." Darren nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "Yes, my friend, thanks to you." With the last of his strength, Darren raised the final Nexus key high above his head. He could feel its power thrumming through his veins, the ancient technology begging to be unleashed upon the galaxy once more. But he knew what he had to do. With a cry of defiance, he hurled the key into the heart of the dying star, watching as it vanished in a flash of blinding light. As the star collapsed in on itself, consuming the last remnants of the progenitor technology, Darren felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had done his duty, had sacrificed everything to keep the galaxy safe. And as he slipped into unconsciousness, his battered body cradled in Takar's arms, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the same courage and determination that had brought him this far. For he was human, and the galaxy was his to protect. As the wormhole closed behind him, Darren emerged onto the gleaming floors of the Galactic Council headquarters, the progenitor artifacts clutched tightly to his chest. His heart ached with the loss of Takar, the brave Zelosian who had sacrificed everything to help him secure these ancient relics. But there was no time to grieve. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Striding into the council chambers, Darren faced the assembled representatives of a dozen alien races. They murmured and whispered as he approached, their eyes widening at the sight of the artifacts. "I have returned from the progenitor world," Darren declared, his voice ringing out clear and strong, "and I bring with me the keys to our salvation." He laid the artifacts on the table before them, watching as they pulsed and glowed with an otherworldly light. "These devices have the power to revolutionize galactic transportation," he explained. "By harnessing the progenitor's wormhole technology, we can unite the races of the galaxy under a single banner, forging a new era of peace and prosperity." But even as he spoke, Darren could see the doubt and fear in their eyes. Some of the councillors leaned forward, their expressions hungry and avaricious, while others recoiled as if the artifacts were poisonous serpents. "This technology is too dangerous," one of them said, a spindly insectoid creature with compound eyes. "It must be destroyed before it falls into the wrong hands." "No," another countered, a bulbous, floating, jellyfish-like being. "We cannot squander this opportunity. With these artifacts, we could become the undisputed masters of the galaxy." As the debate raged on, Darren felt a growing sense of unease. The councillors were so focused on their own petty squabbles that they failed to see the true threat looming on the horizon. He opened his mouth to warn them, but before he could speak, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. Alarms blared and lights flashed as the councillors scrambled for cover. Darren whirled around, his heart pounding, to see a sight that made his blood run cold. There, striding through the smoke and debris, was Emperor Quasar himself, flanked by a legion of Ventaxian soldiers. "Did you really think you could defeat me so easily, human?" Quasar sneered, his eyes blazing with hateful triumph. "I have my own progenitor artifacts, and with them I will crush the Galactic Council and rule the galaxy unopposed." He raised his hand, and a swirling vortex of energy appeared behind him, a massive wormhole large enough to swallow a fleet of ships. Ventaxian fighters poured through the rift, their weapons spitting plasma as they dove towards the Council's defenses. Darren cursed under his breath, realizing the true extent of Quasar's plan. The Emperor had used his own artifacts to create a wormhole generator, allowing him to strike at the heart of the Council itself. Snatching up the nearest blaster, Darren leapt into action, rallying the Council's security forces to meet the Ventaxian charge. "Stand fast," he roared, his voice rising above the chaos of battle. "We fight as one, or we die alone." Plasma bolts crisscrossed the chamber as the two sides clashed, the air thick with the stench of ozone and burning metal. Darren wove through the melee like a ghost, his blaster spitting death with every shot. He saw a Ventaxian soldier bearing down on a wounded councillor and put a bolt through the attacker's head, then spun to face a trio of enemies rushing him from behind. But for every Ventaxian he felled, two more seemed to take their place, pouring through the wormhole in an endless tide. Darren knew they couldn't win this fight through attrition alone. They needed to outmaneuver their foes, to strike at the heart of Quasar's forces. "The artifacts," he shouted, gesturing to the glowing relics on the table. "Use them to create our own wormholes, to flank the Ventaxians and cut them off from reinforcements." The councillors hesitated, their eyes wide with fear and doubt. But Darren pressed on, his voice ringing with the force of his conviction. "This is our only chance," he urged. "We must fight as one, or the galaxy is lost." Slowly, hesitantly, the councillors began to move, seizing the artifacts with trembling hands. They focused their thoughts and energies, and one by one, shimmering portals began to open around the chamber, gateways to distant star systems and far-flung corners of the galaxy. Darren watched with grim satisfaction as the Council's forces surged through the wormholes, emerging behind the Ventaxian lines to catch their foes in a withering crossfire. The tide of battle began to turn, the invaders falling back before the Council's renewed onslaught. But even as victory seemed within reach, Darren saw Emperor Quasar himself charging towards him, his eyes alight with murderous rage. The two warriors clashed in a storm of blades and blaster bolts, their duel carrying them across the shattered remnants of the Council chamber, and through the swirling chaos of the wormholes themselves. They fought across the surface of a dozen worlds, leaping from planet to planet as they matched each other, blow for blow. Quasar was a master of the blade, his every strike swift and sure, but Darren countered with the raw fury of a man who had lost everything, and in whose hands rested the fate of billions. Again and again they clashed, until at last they found themselves back in the Council chamber, their armor battered and their breath coming in ragged gasps. Quasar staggered back, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief as he saw his forces in retreat, the Council's armies driving them back through the wormholes. "No," he hissed, his voice raw with hate and desperation. "I will not be denied my victory." With a snarl of rage, he raised his hand, and Darren saw the progenitor artifacts on his gauntlets begin to glow with a sickly pulsing light. The Emperor was trying to overload his wormhole generator to tear apart the very fabric of space and time itself in a final, suicidal gambit. Darren lunged forward, his heart pounding as he grappled with Quasar, trying to wrench the artifacts from his grasp. The air around them shimmered and warped as the generator began to overload, the wormholes twisting and distorting in impossible shapes. With a final, desperate effort, Darren managed to pry one of the artifacts free, then another. Quasar screamed in rage and pain as the generator began to collapse in on itself, the wormholes shrinking and vanishing one by one. Darren staggered back, shielding his eyes as a blinding flash of light engulfed the Emperor. When the glare faded, Quasar was gone, consumed by the implosion of his own device. The Ventaxian forces, leaderless and demoralized, scattered and fled, vanishing back into the depths of space. The council chamber was a ruin, its walls scorched and shattered, its once proud occupants bloodied and battered. But they had survived, and the galaxy was safe, for now. As the dust settled in the aftermath of the Ventaxian invasion, Darren found himself thrust into a new role, one he had never sought, but could not refuse. With the Galactic Council in shambles and the threat of further chaos looming on the horizon, the surviving leaders turned to him, the hero who had saved them all, to lead the way forward. "Darren, we need you," Councillor Zaxtar said, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "The galaxy is in disarray, and only someone with your strength, your courage, and your knowledge of the progenitor technology can hope to restore order." Darren hesitated, the burden of leadership weighing heavily on his shoulders. He had never wanted power, never sought to rule over others, but as he looked out over the ruins of the council chamber, he knew that he could not turn his back on those who needed him most. "I accept," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "But I will lead as a guardian, not a ruler. The Galactic Defense Initiative will be a force for peace and unity, not conquest or oppression." And so, with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, Darren set to work. He gathered the brightest minds from across the galaxy, forging them into a cohesive team dedicated to harnessing the power of the progenitor technology for the greater good. Under his guidance, the GDI built a network of wormhole gates spanning the vastness of space, allowing their forces to respond to any threat with lightning speed and precision. Alien races from every corner of the galaxy flocked to join the GDI's ranks, drawn by the promise of a brighter future and the chance to work alongside the legendary Darren Bailey. Zephyrians lent their wisdom and diplomatic prowess, while the insectoid Clixthar contributed their unparalleled engineering skills. Even the once hostile Zelosians, freed from Ventaxian rule, pledged their support to the cause of galactic unity. For a time, it seemed as though peace had finally come to the galaxy. But even as the GDI grew in strength and influence, a new threat was gathering in the shadows. Whispers began to circulate of a mysterious organization known as the Void Collective, led by a figure known only as the Void Master. They were said to possess strange and terrible weapons, capable of twisting the very fabric of reality itself. At first, Darren paid little heed to these rumors, dismissing them as the ramblings of conspiracy theorists and doomsayers. But as the reports grew more frequent and more disturbing, he could no longer ignore the growing sense of unease that gnawed at his gut. He dispatched GDI agents to investigate the Void Collective, to infiltrate their ranks and uncover their secrets. But each time, they returned empty-handed, their memories clouded, and their wills broken by some unseen force. It was as if the Void Collective existed in a realm beyond the reach of mortal minds, a place where reality itself bent to their twisted whims. Desperate for answers, Darren led a covert mission into the heart of Void Collective territory, determined to confront the Void Master himself. With a hand-picked team of his most trusted allies, he infiltrated a heavily guarded research facility, fighting his way past legions of fanatical cultists and twisted abominations. But what he found there shook him to his very core, for there, at the center of the Void Collective's power, stood a figure he had once called friend, Takar, the Zelosian, who had sacrificed everything to save Darren's life. Takar's body was twisted and deformed, his once vibrant scales now a sickly, pulsing black. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly energy, and his voice echoed with the weight of 1,000 whispers. "Darren," he rasped, his lips curling into a cruel smile, "I knew you would come. You always were too curious for your own good." Darren stared in horror, his mind reeling with the realization of what his friend had become. "Takar," he whispered, his voice breaking. "What have you done? What have they done to you?" "They have shown me the truth," Takar hissed, his eyes blazing with madness. "The progenitor's technology is not a tool for unity, but a weapon of ultimate power. With it, I will reshape the galaxy in my image, and all will bow before the might of the Void Collective." Darren shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. "No, Takar, this isn't you. The artifacts have twisted your mind, made you into something you're not. Please, let me help you." But Takar only laughed, a cruel and mocking sound that echoed through the chamber. "You cannot help me, Darren. You can only join me or die." With a roar of fury, Takar lunged at Darren, his hands crackling with dark energy. Darren met him head-on, his own body glowing with the power of the progenitor artifacts. They clashed in a blinding flash of light and shadow, their powers tearing at the very fabric of reality itself. Back and forth they fought, their battle raging across the stars and through the twisting corridors of the Void Collective's stronghold. Darren poured every ounce of his strength and skill into the fight, desperately trying to reach the friend he had once known. But it was no use. Takar was lost, consumed by the madness of the Void. With a heavy heart, Darren knew what he had to do. Drawing upon the full might of the progenitor artifacts, he unleashed a blast of pure, blinding energy, engulfing Takar in its radiance. The Zolosian screamed in agony, his body dissolving into nothingness as the power of the artifacts consumed him. Darren fell to his knees, his body racked with pain and grief. He had won, but at what cost? His friend was gone, and the galaxy was still in danger. But as he knelt there, lost in despair, a voice spoke to him, a voice that seemed to come from the very heart of the artifacts themselves. It was the voice of the progenitors, speaking to him across the eons. "Darren Bailey," they said, their words echoing through his mind. "You have fought bravely and sacrificed much, but your journey is not yet over. The true purpose of our technology is not to conquer, but to guide, to lead the younger races of the galaxy towards a brighter future." Darren looked up, his eyes wide with wonder. "But how?" he asked. "How can I lead them when I have lost so much?" "How you have not lost," the progenitors replied. "You have only begun to understand. The path ahead will be difficult, but you must not falter, for in you lies the hope of the galaxy and the key to its salvation." As the voice faded, Darren felt a new sense of purpose flood through him. He rose to his feet, his body still aching from the battle, but his spirit renewed with a fierce determination. He would not let Takar's sacrifice be in vain. He would not let the galaxy fall into darkness. He would lead them into the light, no matter the cost. With Darren's sacrifice heavy on their hearts, the Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Councillor Zaxtar's voice trembled with grief as he addressed the somber gathering. "We have lost a true hero, a champion of unity and peace. Oh, Darren Bailey's legacy will forever be remembered, but we must not let his death be in vain." The chamber erupted into a chorus of murmurs, a palpable sense of uncertainty and fear hanging in the air. Zaxtar raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "In this time of crisis, we must look to the future. The Galactic Defense Initiative will continue its vital work, and it will do so under the leadership of Darren's most trusted protege, Luca Soren." At the mention of his name, Luca stood tall, his jaw set with determination. Though young, he had proven himself time and again as a capable and resourceful operative, learning at the feet of the legendary Darren Bailey himself. "I am honored to take on this responsibility," Luca said, his voice steady, "and I vow to uphold the ideals that Darren fought and died for." As the council session adjourned, Luca found himself in the GDI command center. poring over a flood of reports and data streams. One particular set of anomalies caught his eye, a series of uncharted wormholes appearing in remote corners of the galaxy. "Kira, take a look at this," Luca called out, summoning his most trusted advisor. Kira Voss, a brilliant scientist who had worked closely with Darren on the progenitor technology, hurried to his side. Her brow furrowed as she scanned the data. "These wormholes, they don't match any known progenitor signatures, and their exit points are in completely uncharted regions of space." Luca nodded grimly. "We need to investigate this. Assemble a team of our best operatives. We leave at dawn." As the GDI flagship Prometheus sliced through the inky void of space, Luca couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something momentous. The wormhole loomed before them, a swirling vortex of energy and mystery. "Initiate jump on my mark," Luca ordered, gripping the armrests of his command chair. 3, 2, 1, mark! The ship plunged into the heart of the wormhole, the crew bracing themselves against the turbulent forces. Seconds later, they emerged on the other side, finding themselves in a star system unlike any they had ever seen. Massive pulsating constructs of alien design hung in the void, connected by shimmering filaments of energy, and at the center of it all, a colossal space station, its surface etched with glowing arcane sigils. "By the stars," Kira breathed, her eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. "Those are progenitor glyphs, but different, older." Luca's mind raced, pieces of a vast puzzle falling into place. This is no ordinary progenitor outpost. We're looking at something far more ancient and far more dangerous. Suddenly the comms crackled to life, a cold, imperious voice filling the bridge. "Greetings, children of the younger races. You have stumbled upon the domain of the Ascendants, the true inheritors of the progenitor legacy. Your galaxy, your very existence, is but a fleeting shadow in the grand design of the cosmos. And now you shall bear witness to the dawn of a new age, as we claim our rightful place as the gods of this universe." Luca and his crew listened in stunned silence, the weight of the Ascendant's words sinking in. They had uncovered a threat beyond anything they had ever faced, a foe that sought to unravel the very fabric of reality itself. The fate of the galaxy hung by a thread, and it fell to Luca and his team to stop the Ascendants before it was too late. The secrets of the progenitors and the key to victory lay waiting to be discovered, hidden among the stars and the ruins of ancient civilizations. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the universe, Luca couldn't shake the feeling that Darren Bailey's spirit still watched over them, guiding them towards their ultimate destiny. Luca and his team plunged into the swirling vortex of the nearest wormhole, their ships bucking and shuddering as they were pulled through the twisting currents of space-time. Kira's fingers flew across her console, her brow furrowed in concentration as she worked to stabilize their passage. "The wormhole network is vast," she said, her voice tight with strain. "But I think I've found a pattern in the Ascendant's movements. They're converging on a single point, deep in uncharted space." Luca nodded, his jaw set. "Then that's where we're headed. Prepare to exit the wormhole on my mark." The team braced themselves as their ships burst forth from the wormhole, emerging into a star system unlike any they had ever seen. A massive, pulsating star dominated the sky, its surface seething with strange energies, and orbiting that star was a planet, its surface covered in the unmistakable ruins of progenitor architecture. "There," Kira breathed. "That's where the Ascendants are headed. I'm detecting a massive energy signature from the surface, unlike anything I've ever seen." Luca brought his ship in low over the planet's surface, his eyes widening as he took in the scope of the ruins below. Towering spires of gleaming metal rose from the dust, interspersed with pulsing conduits of energy. At the center of the ruins stood a massive structure, its surface etched with glowing progenitor glyphs. "That must be the facility housing the energy core," Luca said. "Kira, can you get us inside?" Kira nodded, her fingers already dancing across her console. "I think so. The progenitors used a complex system of interlocking fields to secure their facilities, but I should be able to bypass them with a little time. As Kira worked, Luca and the rest of the team set down on the planet's surface, their boots crunching on the ancient dust. They made their way towards the central structure, their weapons at the ready. Suddenly, a searing bolt of energy slammed into the ground at their feet, sending them sprawling. Luca rolled to his feet, his blaster drawn, to see a group of ascendant warriors emerging from the shadows of the ruins. At their head stood a towering figure clad in armor of shimmering black, a cruel smile twisting his features. "Welcome, Luca Soren," the figure said, his voice dripping with malice. "I am the Archon, and I have been waiting for you." Luca's eyes narrowed. "How do you know my name?" The Archon laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "I know everything about you, Luca. I have been watching you from the beginning, guiding your every move. You see, your actions have all been part of a carefully orchestrated plan designed to lure you here, to this very moment." Luca's mind raced, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The Ascendants had been manipulating them from the start, using them to unlock the secrets of the progenitor's technology. And now, with the energy core within their grasp, they were poised to ascend to godhood itself. "You won't succeed," Luca growled, raising his blaster. "We'll stop you whatever it takes." The Archon's smile widened. "We shall see." With a roar of unleashed power, the Ascendant warriors charged forward, their weapons blazing with searing light. Luca and his team met them head-on, blasters and plasma swords clashing in a brutal dance of death. Luca lost himself in the rhythm of battle, his body moving on pure instinct as he dodged and weaved through the chaos. He saw Kira working furiously at a nearby console, her face lit by the glow of progenitor glyphs. "I've got it," she shouted over the din of battle. "I can overload the energy core, but I need more power." Luca's heart raced as he realized what she was suggesting. The core required a massive burst of energy to overload, more than their ship's reactors could provide. But a human, imbued with the power of the progenitor's technology, could act as a living conduit for that energy. Suddenly Luca felt a sense of calm wash over him, a sense of purpose and clarity that he had never known before. He knew with a certainty that defied explanation that this was the moment that Darren had foreseen, the moment that would decide the fate of the galaxy itself. Without hesitation, Luca sprinted towards the energy core, dodging and weaving through the Ascendant warriors that tried to block his path. He could feel the core's power thrumming through his bones, a searing, blinding light that threatened to consume him entirely. With a final, desperate lunge, Luca plunged his hands into the heart of the core, his body arching as the energy surged through him. He could feel his very essence unraveling, his atoms splitting and reforming in the crucible of the core's power. Through the blinding light, Luca saw Kira working frantically at the console, her face a mask of determination. He saw the Archon's eyes widen in sudden realization, saw him lunge forward in a desperate attempt to stop them. But it was too late. With a final, triumphant cry, Kira slammed her hand down on the console, and the energy core exploded in a blinding flash of light. The explosion tore through the facility, shattering the ancient progenitor structures like glass. The wormhole network, the very fabric of the Ascendant's power, collapsed in on itself, severing their connection to the stars and the worlds beyond. Luca felt himself falling, his body battered and broken by the force of the explosion. Through the haze of pain he saw the Archon looming over him, his face twisted in rage. "You have ruined everything," the Archon snarled, his voice thick with hate. "But I will not be denied my destiny." With a roar of unleashed power, the Archon lunged at Luca, a crackling blade of pure energy materializing in his hand. Luca barely managed to roll aside, the blade scoring a searing line across his chest. Gasping for breath, Luca staggered to his feet, his own plasma sword leaping to his hand. He could feel the weight of the galaxy's fate pressing down on him, the knowledge that everything depended on this final, desperate battle. The Archon came at him again, his blade singing through the air in a dizzying blur of light. Luca parried and dodged, his own blade flashing in the dim light of the ruined facility. Back and forth they fought, their blades clashing in showers of sparks and searing plasma. But Luca could feel his strength waning, his body pushed to the very limits of its endurance. The Archon, sensing his weakness, pressed his attack, his blade a blur of searing light. In a final desperate gambit, Luca lunged forward, his blade slicing through the air in a desperate arc. The Archon's eyes widened in sudden realization, but it was too late. Luca's blade struck home, piercing the Archon's heart and unleashing a searing burst of energy that consumed him utterly. As the Archon's body dissolved into nothingness, Luca collapsed to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Around him, the ruins of the facility shuddered and groaned, the last remnants of the Ascendant's power fading away into the dust. Kira and the rest of the team rushed to Luca's side, their faces etched with concern and relief. They helped him to his feet, supporting him as they picked their way through the rubble towards their waiting ships. As they emerged into the sunlight, Luca felt a sense of profound exhaustion wash over him, mingled with a deep, abiding sense of purpose. He knew that the galaxy would never be the same after this day, that the legacy of the progenitors would continue to shape the course of history for eons to come. But for now at least, the threat of the Ascendants had been ended, and the galaxy could begin to heal. Luca knew that there would be challenges ahead, that the scars left by the Ascendants' machinations would not be easily erased. But he also knew that they would face those challenges together, as a united galaxy, stronger and wiser for the trials they had endured. And with the knowledge and power of the progenitors at their fingertips, there was nothing they could not achieve. As Luca stepped through the shimmering gateway, the world around him dissolved into a kaleidoscope of swirling colors and ethereal light. His senses were overwhelmed by the surge of raw, primal energy that coursed through his being, threatening to tear his consciousness asunder. But just as he felt himself beginning to unravel, a familiar presence coalesced before him, the shimmering energy-based form of Darren, his mentor and friend. Luca felt a surge of emotion at the sight, a mixture of joy, relief, and trepidation. "Welcome, Luca," Darren's voice echoed through the vastness of the realm, both inside Luca's mind and all around him. "You have come far, and now stand on the threshold of a new era." Luca looked around in wonder, trying to comprehend the nature of this place. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a realm of pure thought and energy, where the very fabric of reality seemed to bend to the will of its inhabitants. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice sounding small and insignificant amidst the grandeur of the realm. Darren smiled, his form pulsing with a gentle, radiant light. "This is the Progenitor Network, Luca. It is not merely a repository of knowledge, but a living, evolving entity that has guided the evolution of our galaxy for eons." He gestured to the swirling energies around them, which seemed to dance and weave in intricate patterns. The progenitors themselves have long since transcended physical form, merging with the network to become one with the very fabric of the universe. And now, Luca, it is time for you to take on the mantle of guardianship. Luca felt a weight settle on his shoulders, a sense of responsibility and purpose, unlike any he had ever known. "I don't understand," he said, his brow furrowed. "Why me? What must I do?" Darren's expression grew serious, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "You have been chosen, Luca, because of your strength, your wisdom, and your compassion. The network has sensed these qualities in you, and believes that you are the one who can guide the younger races of the galaxy towards a brighter future." He placed a hand on Luca's shoulder, and Luca felt a surge of energy pass between them, a transfer of knowledge and power that made his head spin. "But be warned, Luca. This power comes with a great responsibility. You will face difficult choices in the days to come, and the fate of the galaxy will rest on your shoulders." Luca nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "I will not fail you or the galaxy." As Luca explored the vast expanse of the Progenitor Network, he marveled at the wonders that unfolded before him. Towering spires of pure energy rose up from the ethereal mists, pulsing with the collective knowledge and wisdom of countless civilizations. Streams of data flowed like rivers of light, carrying the thoughts and memories of beings long since passed into the annals of history. But amidst the beauty and grandeur of the realm, Luca also sensed a pervasive darkness lurking at the edges of his perception. It was a presence that seemed to writhe and coil like a serpent, forever seeking to unravel the delicate balance of the universe. "What is that?" Luca asked, his voice tinged with apprehension. Darren's face grew grim, his eyes flickering with a distant sadness. "That, Luca, is the darkness that forever threatens to consume the light. It is the chaos that seeks to undo the order of the cosmos, the entropy that gnaws at the very foundations of reality." Luca felt a chill run down his spine, a primal fear that seemed to emanate from the very depths of his being. "How can we fight against such a force?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Darren smiled, a sad, knowing smile that spoke of the weight of ages. "We fight with knowledge, Luca, with wisdom and understanding, and the power of the network itself. It is a constant struggle, a battle that has raged since the dawn of time, and will continue until the very end of existence." Luca nodded, his resolve hardening like steel. He knew that the path ahead would be fraught with peril and sacrifice, but he also knew that he could not turn away from his destiny. The fate of the galaxy, and of all the countless lives that called it home, now rested in his hands. As the years passed, Luca grew in knowledge and power, becoming a legend among the peoples of the galaxy. He appeared to them in times of great need, a shimmering figure of light and hope that seemed to step out of the very fabric of myth and legend. To the war-torn races of the Outer Rim, he was a bringer of peace, a diplomat who could bridge even the most bitter of divides. To the scholars and scientists of the core worlds, he was a font of wisdom, a teacher who could unlock the deepest mysteries of the universe. And to the children of 1,000 worlds, he was a guardian angel, a protector who watched over them from the stars above. But even as Luca's legend grew, he could feel the weight of his burden bearing down upon him. The constant struggle against the forces of chaos and darkness took its toll, eroding his strength and his will with each passing day. He knew that he could not continue this fight forever, that even his vast reserves of power and knowledge had their limits, and so, with a heavy heart, he began to search for a successor, someone who could take up the mantle of guardianship and carry on the work that he had begun. His search took him to the far corners of the galaxy, to worlds both ancient and new. He met with leaders and sages, warriors and poets, all in the hopes of finding someone worthy of the task at hand. And then, on a small, unremarkable planet on the edge of the galactic rim, he found her. She was a young woman, barely more than a child, but in her eyes Luca saw a fire that burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. Her name was Aria, and she possessed a rare combination of compassion, intelligence, and strength that Luca knew would serve her well in the battles to come. "I have chosen you, Aria," Luca said, his voice heavy with the weight of ages. "The path ahead will not be easy, but I believe that you have the strength and the wisdom to walk it." Aria looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. "I will not let you down," she said, her voice steady. "I will carry on your legacy and protect the galaxy as you have done." Luca smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile that spoke of the passing of an era. He placed his hand on Aria's shoulder, feeling the transfer of power and knowledge that flowed between them. "I know you will," he said. "The future of the galaxy is in your hands now." As Luca prepared to take his final journey into the heart of the progenitor network, he felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. He had lived a long and fulfilling life, had seen and done things that most beings could only dream of, and now he knew that it was time for him to let go, to pass on the torch to a new generation of guardians. But even as he felt the pull of the network, the call to merge his consciousness with the infinite expanse of the universe, Luca couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. He would miss the simple pleasures of corporeal existence. The feeling of the wind on his face, the warmth of a sun on his skin, the laughter of friends and loved ones. He turned to Arya, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Remember, Arya," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "the universe is a vast and wondrous place, filled with beauty and danger in equal measure. Never lose sight of that wonder, even in your darkest hours." Arya nodded, her own eyes glistening with emotion. "I won't," she promised. "I will carry your memory with me always, and strive to be worthy of the trust you have placed in me." With a final poignant smile, Luca turned his gaze to the stars above. He closed his eyes, feeling the rush of energy and consciousness that flowed through him, carrying him into the heart of the network. And as he merged with the infinite expanse of the universe, becoming one with the very fabric of reality itself, Luca knew that his story would live on. It would become a legend, a tale of heroism and sacrifice that would inspire generations to come. If you finish this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.